Most people think discipline is about willpower. They believe it's a personality trait, something you either have or you don't. But that belief is not only false, it's dangerous, because it blinds you to a truth rooted in hard neuroscience. There is a part of your brain designed for discipline. It's not abstract, it's not imaginary, it's physical. It's called the prefrontal cortex, a region located just behind your forehead, and it is the command center for decision, making, focus, goal pursuit, and behavioral control. When you resist the easy path, when you take the harder option, when you follow through despite discomfort, this part of your brain lights up like fire. And the more you use it, the more powerful it becomes. Discipline is not a mood or a motivational wave. It is the strengthening of a neural circuit that, like a muscle, only grows through repetition and pressure. When you wake up early despite being tired, when you choose exercise over excuses, when you speak truth instead of pleasing the crowd, these are not just moral choices. They are neurobiological reps. They strengthen the pathways that make self-control more automatic, more reliable, more deeply woven into who you are. The brain is not static. It rewires itself based on what you do consistently, and the more you activate this circuit of discipline, the thicker and faster those neural connections become. Over time, hesitation fades, decision fatigue dissolves, and the hard path becomes the only path you recognize as truth. But the prefrontal cortex does not get stronger by accident. It grows under stress, under resistance. Under pressure, it needs friction to activate. It requires discomfort to signal growth. That is why discipline is forged in moments when you feel least like choosing it. The brain doesn't strengthen by comfort. It strengthens by alignment with conviction. This is not self-help. This is sacred design. You were made in the image of order, not chaos, in the image of mastery, not mediocrity. And the system within you will respond when you stop waiting to feel ready and start acting in obedience to purpose. The world around you will tempt your circuits to weaken. Notifications, sugar, ease, noise. All of it is structured to bypass your prefrontal cortex and enslave your lower brain centers. But when you train discipline, real discipline, you regain sovereignty. You take back the throne of your mind. You become the architect of your reactions, the master of your body, the voice that says no when the world screams now. This is not punishment. It is liberation, because to act with discipline is to operate in alignment with your highest self, the version of you that does not bow to urges but rules over them. You want to be relentless. You want to be unshakable. Then stop praying for feeling and start training for circuitry. Stand up and act when your emotions say to sit down. Take the step when your body craves stillness. Because every time you do, the prefrontal cortex takes note. The neurons wire tighter. The signal becomes faster. And soon, discipline is no longer a debate. It's not a question. It's a default, not because you got lucky, but because you showed up in the silence again and again until your brain understood. This is who I am now. This is what we do. This is how we rise. Delaying gratification activates and trains the brain's impulse control systems. There is a war inside your mind every single day, a war between now and later, between comfort and calling, between impulse and integrity. And the outcome of that war determines your future. At the heart of that battle lies a powerful system in your brain designed to delay gratification, to say no to the immediate reward so you can rise toward something greater. That system lives in the prefrontal cortex, and it is trained, sculpted, and strengthened every time you deny the lie of right now, in order to choose what matters in the long run. This is not just character, this is neuroplasticity. When you delay gratification, you're not just being strong, you are building strength. Neurons fire, connections form, pathways of control and vision are reinforced. Your brain literally learns, that waiting leads to reward. And when that circuitry becomes strong enough, you are no longer pulled by impulse, you are guided by vision. The noise of temptation fades, and the stillness of conviction rises. In a world wired for instant everything, dopamine on demand, pleasure at your fingertips, stimulation with zero cost, discipline becomes rare because impulse is constantly fed. But the man or woman who can delay gratification becomes dangerous, unstoppable, clear. Because when you refuse to take the shortcut, when you say no to the sugar, no to the scroll, no to the fake reward, you reclaim authority over your nervous system. And the system begins to adapt. The brain rewires to match your refusal, and that refusal becomes your strength. It doesn't feel powerful in the moment. It feels small, boring, unnoticed. But this is the quiet work of building the inner temple. Every time you resist the easy path, you are placing stones on the altar of your mind, stones that support resilience, focus, and fire. You're not depriving yourself, you're preparing yourself, because the greater the delay, the greater the depth of the reward. Not just externally, but internally, you feel it, you carry it, you walk differently, think differently, move differently. Because you are no longer owned by impulse, you own it. This is how you forge the path of the uncommon. Not by hype, not by sensation, but by mastering the microscopic moments where the world says give in. And you say not today. That voice, that pause, that delay, that's the spark of divine discipline being lit inside your brain. It's not weakness to resist. It is biological worship, a return to order. You were not built to serve your cravings. You were built to conquer them, and when you do, your brain listens. It starts to recognize the pattern. The dopamine system adjusts, the cravings weaken, the higher pathways take over, and the version of you that was once addicted to ease becomes addicted to excellence. Not because the road got easier, but because your mind got fortified in truth. Because you taught your brain that we don't take what's convenient. We earn what's eternal. Daily rituals create predictable neural inputs that hardwire consistency. The brain does not thrive on chaos. It thrives on rhythm, on predictable, repeated inputs that signal stability, safety, and alignment. When your days are scattered, your thoughts follow. When your actions are random, your energy fractures. But when you build rituals, structured behaviors done at the same time, in the same way, with clear intention, you create neural anchors that stabilize your identity and give your mind a place to stand when the world feels unstable. This isn't about superstition or routine for routine's sake. It's about sending signals to your nervous system that say, this is who we are, this is what we do, and we do it with discipline. Your brain is constantly looking for patterns. It's looking for cues, environmental, emotional, physical, that it can associate with a particular state of mind. When you start your day the same way every morning with movement, light, breath, stillness, you train your system to activate the circuits for energy and clarity without needing to think about it. That's not just habit, that's neuroplasticity in motion. The neurons that fire together wire together. And over time, the ritual becomes automatic, the effort required to begin disappears, resistance fades. What once felt difficult becomes part of your nature, not by chance, but by design. This is why ancient warriors, prophets, monks, and elite performers all understood the power of ritual. Not as ceremony, but as structure, as a container for their calling. The modern world celebrates flexibility, but the nervous system craves order. And when you establish sacred rituals, when your actions align with your highest values day after day, you stop relying on willpower and start running on architecture. Your brain begins to predict success, not question it. You don't wake up wondering who you are. You wake up as the person who moves, who breathes, who builds, who obeys. Rituals protect you from chaos. They shield you from the drift of emotion. They hold you when motivation fails. And they give you a place to return to every time life tries to pull you off course. This isn't about being robotic. It's about being rooted. Because when your morning, your work, your training, your focus all follow a structure of discipline, the chaos outside can't corrupt the clarity within. The ritual becomes a form of resistance. It becomes your shield, your sword, your spiritual alignment. You don't rise by accident, you rise by instruction. And the most powerful instruction your brain can receive is repetition with meaning. When your rituals are tied to purpose, they transform into spiritual disciplines. Each one becomes a declaration that you will not be ruled by mood, that you will not be tossed by distraction, that you are grounded in something higher than convenience, something deeper than emotion, that you are training a nervous system, building a fortress, commanding a fire that doesn't flicker with the wind. The ritual is not what makes you strong. It's what reveals the strength already planted in your soul. Cold exposure and physical discomfort reinforce the brain's capacity to override emotion. There is a sacred place in your biology where strength is not just imagined, it is initiated. A place where the body speaks directly to the brain, and the brain decides what kind of person you will be. This place is activated when you deliberately enter physical discomfort, especially through cold exposure. It is there, in that shock, in that resistance, that you teach your nervous system a powerful truth. I do not obey emotion. I command it. The cold doesn't just test you, it trains you. It speaks to the deepest layers of your wiring and says, now we find out if you flinch or if you rise. The moment your body enters cold, the survival circuits fire, your heart rate increases, your breath shortens. To lights up with fail urgency. But in that space when most people retreat, something holy happens for those who choose to stay. You breathe, you anchor your mind, you don't flee, you override. And this act, repeated with intensity and intention, builds a cortical override system that begins to influence every part of your life. You're not just building tolerance to temperature, you're building resistance to emotional reactivity. You're strengthening the wiring that says, even when my body protests, I choose the mission. This isn't just willpower. This is neuroplastic training. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function, begins to dominate the more primal parts of your brain. The insula, which processes pain and interoception, becomes more stable. The stress response becomes more efficient. Cortisol is released but no longer rules. And most importantly, you reinforce a sense of agency, that sacred belief that says, I am not at the mercy of how I feel. I act from truth, not sensation. And here's the deeper reality. Cold exposure is a physical mirror of your spiritual condition. Life will not always be warm. The mission will not always feel good. Purpose will not always come with comfort. But when you train yourself to move into controlled suffering, when you use the cold as a rehearsal for life's pressure, you don't get weaker. You become spiritually weaponized. You learn that the war isn't against the coal. It's against quitting. And when you win that battle, day after day, breath after breath, your brain starts to follow your soul instead of your fear. Discomfort is the doorway to dominion. It is where the old self dies and the trained self is born. And every time you step into cold, not recklessly, but reverently, you are placing a demand on your biology to rise above feeling. You're declaring to your mind that pain is not the problem, passivity is, that emotions may visit, but they do not dictate, that fear may knock, but it does not rule. And with each session, each second, each breath held through the burn, the deeper circuits of your brain begin to believe what your spirit already knows. You are no longer a slave to emotion. You are the one who leads. Tracking small wins triggers dopamine in forward action, not outcome-strengthening discipline identity. There is a powerful, God-ordained system within your brain that rewards action, not just achievement. It is the dopaminergic pathway, the very neurochemical engine that fuels drive, motivation, focus, and perseverance. But what most people don't realize is that dopamine isn't only released at the finish line. It can, and must, be triggered by the process, by the effort, by the simple act of doing the work. This is where true discipline is forged, not in the grand victories, but in the sacred consistency of showing up and seeing small progress. Every time you take action, and then acknowledge that action, even if the outcome isn't perfect, your brain releases dopamine. And that dopamine creates a feedback loop, a reward signal that says, "This is good, do it again." It wires your nervous system not to crave the result, but to crave the effort. That's when you become unstoppable. That's when motivation becomes internal, not circumstantial. And it starts with tracking the small wins the early way. Cup, the cold shower, the workout completed, the hour of deep work without distraction. These are not minor acts. They are neurobiological confirmations of identity. When you write them down, when you speak them out, when you recognize that forward motion was made today, no matter how small, you send a message to your brain: we are a person of follow-through. We finish what we start, we act when we don't feel like it, and your system responds. Neurons that wire together start firing faster. The circuitry of discipline becomes more efficient. You no longer rely on hype or pressure or fear to get things done. You operate from internal alignment. You are no longer waiting to feel worthy. You're proving it to your nervous system day by day. This is the design. The reward is not in the comfort. The reward is in the effort. This is the secret written into creation itself, that those who persevere through the process are rewarded by transformation. And your brain is not just passively observing. It is constantly reshaping itself around what you consistently reinforce. So, if you only reward yourself when the outcome is complete, your brain will associate work with strain. But if you celebrate progress, measurable, deliberate steps, your brain will crave the work itself. It will begin to see every action as purpose, every movement as mission. This is spiritual because it teaches you to love the unseen, to rejoice in the process, to stay loyal to what no one else sees, because you're not just doing it for applause. You're doing it to build a foundation that no one can shake. That's not just behavior, that's identity. And when your brain starts firing dopamine not from likes, but from obedience to discipline, you become a weapon. Unmoved by delay, unshaken by trial, because you've trained your system to praise the process, not just to finish, but to walk forward with your eyes fixed, your spirit strong, and your mind rewired for relentless motion. Discipline becomes automatic when the brain learns that effort is the reward. There is a shift that happens deep in the nervous system when the human mind stops chasing outcomes and starts honoring effort. A shift from chasing dopamine through pleasure to creating dopamine through purpose. Your brain, by design, was not built to thrive off shortcuts or stolen rewards. It was built to burn clean on energy earned through meaningful action. And when you begin to train your mind to recognize that effort itself is the reward, something sacred happens. Discipline becomes automatic. Inside the brain, particularly in the mesolimbic pathway, lies the dopaminergic engine that drives behavior. Every time you move forward, even without guarantee of success, your brain is watching. It asks, did we act? Did we pursue? Did we stretch against resistance? And when the answer is yes, the reward chemistry follows. But if the brain only receives dopamine from achievement or from instant gratification, it learns to delay action, to chase cheap highs, to crave outcomes while avoiding the pain required to reach them. This is where discipline dies, when dopamine is decoupled from effort. But when you train your nervous system to associate satisfaction with exertion, to find fire in the climb instead of the summit, you unlock an entirely different circuit of endurance. One where you rise in the dark without applause. One where you push through pain without an audience. One where the brain stops asking how long and starts declaring as long as it takes. This is not hype. This is biological sovereignty. This is you reclaiming control over the internal reward system so that discipline is no longer something you need to talk yourself into. It becomes a reflex, a rhythm, a revelation of who you truly are. This rewiring is spiritual because it mirrors a higher truth, that greatness is not a product of outcomes, it's a byproduct of faithfulness. And the brain learns what you repeat. If you only feel fulfilled when you win, your system weakens. But if you feel fulfilled every time you fight, every time you obey your protocol, Every time you choose integrity over ease, your brain becomes addicted to effort. That's not motivation, that's transformation, and it turns discipline from a decision into a default. You train this shift through small, daily battles, through the choice to move when you want to rest, to pray when you want to scroll, to lift when you want to lounge, to say no when the world screams yes. And when you begin to feel something deeper than pride, when you begin to feel peace in that effort, you know the rewiring is complete. Your system is no longer controlled by comfort, it is guided by calling. Effort becomes the anthem. Sacrifice becomes the signal, and obedience to the work, regardless of the outcome, becomes the spiritual and neural fuel for your mission. This is when you stop performing discipline and start embodying it, because you've trained your brain to see effort not as punishment, but as praise, not as pain, but as power,